Joining us now is Frank Zaccanelli.
Frank Zaccanelli.
Frank Zaccanelli.
Frank Zaccanelli.
Let's welcome Frank Zaccanelli.
Live from the Real News Studios in Dallas, Texas, welcome to the To Be Frank Show. Your host, Frank Zaccanelli, has been in the world of domestic and international business and professional sports for 40 years. And as a former minority owner, president, and general manager of the Dallas Mavericks, he's been asked to comment on current events in the national news for most of his professional career. But what he and many others are really looking for is a place to find just the facts. Welcome to the To Be Frank Show.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the second episode of the To Be Frank Show, live from Dallas, Texas. We have an exciting show today as it relates to covering all aspects of the coronavirus, which is clearly a major topic in every household, not only in the United States, but around the world. Our guest today is Dr. Murray Cohen. Dr. Cohen has worked with the CDC for 21 years and has also worked with the WHO. He is an expert on infectious diseases, and he's also involved in bioterrorism research. And this is something that we're going to talk a little bit about in my monologue on the bioterrorism side, because I think that it really does fit into the whole picture that we're dealing with today in the United States. Here's what I want to say this morning in terms of the monologue and really setting the show up. Our country is gigantically divided today. As we sit back today and we watch the news and we read the newspapers, the blame game is being played not only on the coronavirus, but on other really important issues that affect our country and the world. When I break it down, you can really break the coronavirus down to politics and economics. And what does that mean? Well, on the political side, you've got a lot of people pointing fingers at each other. The country has a canyon-wide divide politically in terms of the way that they view not only this virus, but the way that they view most things now in our country. The unfortunate part right now is the fact that this virus has hit us at a very vulnerable time, and it also hit us in an election year. So everybody is on high alert in terms of taking political points away and not really addressing what I consider to be the worst pandemic in the United States in the last 100 years. This is a really serious thing that is being politicized not only by our politicians, but by the media. The media has also chosen sides. They have sliced it and diced it, and they've decided that they're going to cover this thing one way or the other. Now, that really doesn't solve anything for anybody. What it really does, it creates tremendous discord in the country. And on one side, you have an argument where you've got one side saying that they didn't really take this, the administration really didn't take this virus as seriously as it needed to. And there's some merit to that. You know, this is going to go away when it gets warmer and heat and humidity, and it's not going to be that bad. The death toll is not that bad, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. On the other side, you've got people making the argument that, well, the social distancing, that really doesn't count when it comes to protesting and it comes to the marches and it comes to all these other things that, again, are necessary in our country. But there was no social distancing that I could see in the last 2.5 weeks as it related to this. And so the argument coming, you take a look really at what's going on down in Orange County. There's a picture that's up, and if you tell me that that's social distancing, then we should really have a long discussion, because this is what's going on in our country. It's very difficult to get people to take this virus seriously. And then you hear all the anecdotes and you hear all the discussion about, well, the only people really dying are people that are in nursing homes. Well, that's not necessarily true. 43% of the people that are dying, I want to get my facts straight here. The New York Times has printed, I think within the last couple days, that 43% of the people that have died of this virus are in nursing homes. That means 57% of the people are not. That's a big number. And the death rate is coming down, and this rate is coming down. And then there's a new one that's out there now. Well, there's more cases now that are being discovered in the United States because we're testing more. That is completely, I think, void of the fact that the more that we open up our country, we get into a situation where you're going to have more cases. Now, let's flip over to the flip side of the politics, and we'll talk some about the economics. When we start talking about economics, we're talking about a country that is set up as a capitalist society that really can't shut down. We really can't shut the country down. So now, on the other side of the equation, the big argument is, and it's legitimate, that we can't be in lockdown forever. Our country cannot withstand that type of economic hit. We take a look at, and I'm going to read a few statistics for you, but we take a look at the situation as it relates to, as it relates to what's happening in the country from an economic standpoint. In 2021, it has now been set out that our deficit for 2021, we're spending more money than we're taking in, is $1.1 trillion. And that is out there, and it's in the Congressional Budget Office. They put all these statistics out there. Because of the coronavirus, though, that number has doubled. And the harsh reality of that number doubling is that gets completely added to our national debt, which is now becoming a major issue. Because you can't continue to borrow and have deficit spending to the level that we're going. Therein lies the political argument on the other side. We don't have a choice. We have to open up the economy. We can't have the economy shut down. We have to have a country that is based on fundamentals, that ultimately people have to go to work. That's a legitimate argument. The question then becomes, how do we do it in a safe way that ultimately safeguards people from, this terrible pandemic that we're in the middle of? The issue then becomes, testing obviously has gone up, but I don't think that we're testing nearly enough. I think every person should get tested and really understand the risks that they have to their families, their friends, their parents, their grandparents, whatever the situation. A lot of the cases that are now being reported on, about half of them are people under 35 years old. And we say now in the country, well, these people are not at risk of dying. Here's the problem that we don't really understand, though. We don't really understand if they're not at risk of dying for a young female that gets infected with this virus. Is she going to have any ancillary issues down the road as it relates to reproductive organs or other things that are out there? For the younger male, is he going to have any third-party related things because he had gotten the virus at his age? Are there going to be issues down the road that maybe because of the virus he'll have to face when he gets on with his life? These are all the issues that are not being discussed because I don't think that anyone really has all the information. And I think we need to get the information because it's not as simple as saying you're not at risk. Everyone's at risk here. And we've got to figure out how to meet these two standards that I've just talked about, the politics and the economics. And how do they merge together? Well, they merge together that we have to open up our country safely. There's only 2 states in the United States of America this morning that had a decrease in cases. I mean, this is really sad. That's Connecticut and Rhode Island. This is per, again, the New York Times. That's unbelievable. If you really think about it, only two states in the country have had a reduced number of cases, as we all were told, and we all assume that we're going to get into the summer, we're going to be able to go to the beaches, we're going to be able to do what we have to do. So therein lies a big problem here in the United States. Now let's go for a moment, let's go to Europe. And let's talk about Europe. We got this pandemic, we got this COVID-19 from Europe. They got it from China, we got it from them. You take a look at this beach in England, to me, again, you don't have to be a Phi Beta Kappa to figure out there's nobody that's there that is social distancing. There's nobody there that has masks on. I mean, this is going to blow up like nobody's business. And we're being told by the Europeans, the European Union, that they're going to open up now the European Union for travel, which has been shut down for the last, just say, 3 months. And the United States of America is not going to be able to travel to Europe because, quote unquote, we're in the middle of this pandemic. But they're allowing the Chinese to come in. China, they're allowing to come in, who has reported 84,000 cases and 4,500 deaths. Now, if anyone believes that, there's a bridge in New Mexico that I'd like to talk to you about, because those are ridiculous numbers. But this is the politics and a lot of the hypocrisy that's occurring in the country. Everybody is pointing at everyone else. The European Union, when you really take a look at them, they've been in a lockdown. A lot of countries in the European Union, which this show is being broadcast to, basically have a different form of government than the United States. They allow people to stay out of work longer. They supplement businesses that ultimately are closed down. So they've taken a very calm approach to this. But what's happening is sooner or later they have to open up. When they open up and people get together, is this going to start spreading again? Take a look at the photo of the UK. Does that look like people are concerned about the coronavirus? Doesn't look that way to me. I mean, this is just unbelievable stuff. So we're in a situation now that we need all hands on deck. Nobody's right if everybody's wrong. Remember the song from the Buffalo Springfield? I mentioned it in my first show, For What It's Worth. Nobody's right if everybody's wrong. So we've got to come together as a country, and this has to be a one world approach. We've got to come together with the world. We've got to take the politics out, and we got to figure out how we can stem the tide of this terrible pandemic. So that's what we're going to try to do on this show, and we're going to try to give everyone information that might be able to help them start to think about this in a different vein. So I'd like to introduce my first guest, Dr. Murray Cohen, again, who is 21 years at the CDC with the WHO and is a foremost authority on infectious disease. And so, Dr. Cohen, are you there?
I'm here. Good to see you today, Frank.
Great to see you, Dr. Cohen. And thank you so much for coming on the show. And I want to cover a multitude of things, because I've been getting phone calls from people that I know now that they know I'm doing the show, and the list of questions that they have, there's so many unanswered questions out there. So we want to kind of just drill down, and we want to get to the bottom of it in a non-political way where we can get the viewer of this show information that might help them keep their family safe, keep themselves safe, and be able to try to figure out how we work through this pandemic. So my first question is, Dr. Cohen, can you get this disease twice? Can you get this COVID-19 disease? Can you get it twice? If you've had it, can you get it again?
I wish I could give you a quick answer, but then it wouldn't be understandable. So let me take the time to give you a little bit of background and explanation. The answer is we don't know. What's one of the really big, outstanding questions that's being researched right now. On the other hand, I'm a real practical guy, and I'm an epidemiologist. I'm not a clinician. I believe that the perfect can't be the enemy of the good enough, or I'd rather be right most of the time than exactly right once. So by all that, I mean, I think you're pretty safe if you've had it once, at least right now, within a year. Now, let me talk about why I say that. Some very early studies last December were done in China with the macaques as a human model, where they were infected with COVID-19, they got well, and then they tried to infect them again, and not a one could be infected. Now that's monkeys, but at least we know that there's something going on in the immune system that pretty much gets rid of COVID. On the other hand, we know from very similar viruses that people who get it, even when you've resolved the virus, you're not necessarily free of the virus. And I'm glad you brought up the idea, the notion of sequelae, of complications that can come down the road. I like to say that, unlike love, viruses really are forever. Take herpes zoster, for example, that causes the chickenpox. And then it's dormant in the nervous system for the rest of your life and comes back later in life as the disease we call shingles. So once you're cured of chickenpox, are you really cured of the virus? I don't think so. You're just done with it for that particular set of circumstances. So to me, we don't want to get the virus, but if you get it, you're not going to likely get it again. And even if you do, we know that you have mounted a successful immune response. If you got it and then you resolve it, your immune system is working well against this virus. So I give you a pretty good shot of working well if you get it again.
So let me ask you,
though,
why are some people, Dr. Cohen, they seem to get this virus and have really bad outcomes, but yet other people, and I'm talking about now in the same kind of box, these people, same age, same health, same everything. Why are some people affected much more dramatically with this virus than others? Because that's another big question that's out there. You know, so-and-so got it and it was no problem, but then this other person got it and they were in the hospital. What have we been able to determine why that occurs?
It's an area of very active research. In fact, I was reading a paper just last night. We're trying to look at factors that can explain differences in the body's response to the virus. For example, there's a lot of work going on looking at blood type. Does that make a difference in how sick you get? Of course, the obvious ones of underlying medical conditions and age and gender, et cetera. It's very actively being researched because we don't know and we need to know. And as you pointed out in your opening monologue, simply being young doesn't give you a pass at all.
Well, there's no question about that. And part of the problem, Dr. Cohen, is the fact that I think that because of a lot of the information that's been put out in the media, there's a mindset with the younger Americans that they're really at no risk. And if anything is not accurate, that's it. Because not only are they at risk, they're spreading the virus and they're keeping this virus from they're creating the ability for this virus to continue to expand. And that's what's got to be shut down. Let's talk about China for a second. So we've heard various different, and you've been with the WHO and you've worked with the WHO, and we've heard a lot of discussion about this virus started in a wet market. And then there was this notion that was out there about 2 or 3 months ago that no, it didn't start in a wet market. It started in a laboratory in Wuhan. Now, let me ask you, I'd like for you to talk about that, but the question really around that is, does it make a difference as it relates to how we deal with the virus if this virus is man-made versus maybe not man-made?
Well, it does make a difference. And here's why. And now we're getting into the biosecurity or bioterrorism elements of these emerging pathogens. For example, just because it wasn't in a lab, by the way, I'm firmly convinced of that. But if it was, there's a difference of if it's in a laboratory being studied, a natural bat-borne or other mammalian-borne virus, and it somehow escapes. It's still just a natural virus that's jumping, that's doing what we call spillover from one mammalian species to the human species. It's not engineered. We know that this one's not engineered because we've done very good work on doing the genome of the virus and all of its mutations so far. There's about 6 of them that have been reported so far. We know the genome, and we know that that exact genome exists in bats. So it didn't get engineered and given to bats. It's just in nature. So it's a naturally occurring virus, however it got out. Now, about the wet markets were the first place that we found them, that we knew that the virus existed and cases existed. Does that mean that's patient 0, the very first one? Maybe not. Maybe it was in not a bat, but a civet cat or some other mammal and was out in nature and got to somebody. And we just saw it when it got to the wet market. But in terms of what do we do with this knowledge? We know it was in the wet market, so we have to close down the wet market. We know the Chinese are lying, as you pointed out. This is not new. They lie all the time. They lie on all of these kinds of viral outbreaks. We know that they're way ridiculously underreporting their number of cases. We can't really trust that their laboratory was secure and it didn't leak out, even if it was just a naturally occurring virus, because they refused to let the WHO in to do what the international health regulations require for a third-party evaluation. So that's why all these suspicions continue to arise. But to your basic question, is there anything we do differently? Until we knew that it was exactly a naturally born virus, yes, we had to very much worry that it would be an engineered virus, because then we wouldn't have any idea how to develop therapeutics or vaccines. The fact that it's naturally occurring tells us, okay, now we got a starting point. And so let's see what we can learn, or what we know already from study of coronaviruses that are in other mammals, particularly in livestock. What can we learn to give us a head start on developing our therapeutics and our vaccines?
Well, let me give you a theory that's really going around today, not only here but in Europe and other places, is that the spread of this virus is not going to be contained until we get a vaccine that ultimately can be reliable, that will shut down the spread of this virus. Here's an interesting thing, Dr. Cohen, is that, we were again told that this was not going to last very long, that when the summer got here and the heat and humidity and all these other things that we've been told, all of that has been proven to be not accurate. And I think the American people, and I believe, again, I can throw most of the rest of the world, the Europeans for sure, but the rest of the world into this, no one trusts the information anymore. I mean, there's a gigantic distrust in what we're being told and how it's being told to us. So my question is, would you agree with the theory that we're really not going to be able to stop the spread of this virus until we get a vaccine that ultimately works against the virus in a way where we could stop the spread?
Absolutely. And here's why. The first word in the official name of this virus is novel. It's novel coronavirus SARS-2. Novel means it is brand new to human beings. We have never seen it before. Our immune systems are what we call naive. No one has ever seen this before. That means that there's 8 billion people in the world, and every single one of them is going to either get the virus and die, get the virus and resolve it, and then live with whatever the sequelae are, or not get the virus. There's no other possible choice. So when you look at it that way, the only way we can get ahead of the virus is to have not just one vaccine. I think there's going to be several vaccines. Just because try to ramp up and manufacture something and figure out how to deploy it to 8 billion people. They're going to have varying degrees of success. Some may only be successful for a year and then need a booster shot. Some may be like smallpox and you get it just once. But it's not like we're looking for the holy grail or a magic bullet, one vaccine. We are looking to the scientific world of vaccinology to create that opportunity to tickle our immune systems so that if we're exposed to the virus, we don't get sick. We don't get the virus.
What is your estimation of timing, Dr. Cohen, on when you think that there'll be a vaccine that will be available to the general public? How long do you think that process is going to take? Because again, we've heard varying degrees of, we're going to have a vaccine this year, or it's going to be early next year, or it's going to be this or that. Again, all the information that I believe that the world is getting is suspect because a lot of the information that we've been given has not been accurate. So what is your best guess about the timing of a vaccine?
And let me try to explain where some of that inaccuracy comes from, or what seems like mixed messages. First, Frank, I have to tell you, my crystal ball gets real fuzzy past about lunchtime today. So You're asking for predictions, keep that in mind. I will tell you that the original word that it would take us 1.5 to 2.5 years to get an effective vaccine was based on our history of vaccines. It's always taken that long. Now, we have some tools available to us now that we've never had before. One of them is called DNA vaccines, which are, in essence, engineered. They're not actually pieces of virus or what's called attenuated viruses, like the other vaccines we've had before. So it's a theory that you can take just a piece of DNA and make a vaccine that the body will respond to and recognize the natural virus when it sees it. It's never been proven. It's just a theory. There's at least half a dozen companies that I've read about that are trying to develop vaccines of that sort. We don't know where that's going to go. So that's a part of why you keep hearing, 1.5 to 2.5 years. On the other hand, we didn't start from square zero. We already had a lot of research going on to develop vaccines for coronaviruses, especially some that are in livestock, say cattle. So all that work has been, repurposed to look at this particular COVID-19 and see if any of those the vaccines that were somewhere along in development will work. And that's where we see this shortened time frame. I think the president said he was expecting one by the end of this year. Tony Fauci said, maybe sometime during 2021. I started saying from way back at the beginning of this, in December, that knowing what I know about vaccine development that's ongoing, I was pretty sure we'd have one by the end of this year, certainly before the end of our flu season. It might turn out that we end up having some kind of a combination vaccine. It's the flu vaccine and the COVID-19 vaccine. All that's possible. But I think there's, pretty good odds that sometime during the flu outbreak in the United States, in the Northern Hemisphere. So sometime in the winter of 2021, we will have at least one vaccine that's been shown to be safe and effective.
All right. Short answer from you, because I've got a bunch to cover here, but can we expect that in the traditional flu season in the winter that we're going to see more cases of COVID based on that alone?
Yes. It's called co-infection. The immune system is already shot from one virus, so it's more susceptible to another.
Okay. All right. Well, that's also something that I think is in front of us, and quite frankly, is a little scary to people that, you know, it possibly can get worse during the flu season, and it's something that we need to be prepared for. Let me talk to you about a different angle on this. You know, I'm a big proponent of a strong military, and I come out of a background, my father was a highly decorated veteran out of World War II. He really was part of the greatest generation. Very proud of not only him, but all the things that him and his colleagues did for our country. You know, Donald Trump came in and rebuilt the military, and I think it needed to be rebuilt. And he did a real nice job of being able to do that. Now, we spend about $750 billion a year on our military. $750 billion. It's a major part of our annual budget. And I'm not, this is not a political statement on whether we should be doing that or not. Here's my question. You're an expert in bioterrorism. The way that I've seen our country, unfortunately, and the world be unprepared, okay, I'll make that general statement. In my view, we've been unprepared to handle this pandemic. God forbid if our world now gets hit with a bioterrorism situation. We spend all this money on military hardware and all the things that we traditionally have done. I'm very concerned about the fact that bioterrorism now, given our response to the COVID-19 scenario, if we were ever to be in the middle of a bioterrorism problem, I think we would really, really have a big problem. And my contention is we should appropriate some of the money that goes to the military to make sure that we don't find ourselves in this situation again as it relates to a potential bioterrorism problem. And you say?
Well, there is some military money that's appropriated for bioterrorism research and response. The USAMRIID, United States Army Medical Research Institute for Infectious Diseases in Fort Detrick, Maryland, is kind of a center. There's also another base, Dugway Proving Ground in Utah, where a lot of work has gone on. And they do things like, they study where if a plume of something like anthrax was released from an airplane, how far will it spread? How long will it last? Or if there's a dirty bomb, if you will, if certain kinds of biological agents or chemical agents are put into a bomb, or God forbid, a nuclear bomb, will they survive the blast, even though we know that it might spread out over a long area? So there is a lot of work going on like that. Let me just give you two things to think about. They're pretty horrifying, but I maintain that I'm a believer. I thank God. So far, He's blessed us with stupid terrorists. Look at Timothy McVeigh. The guy that blew up that truck full of fertilizer and killed 168 people in Oklahoma City. If he'd have just put anthrax spores, if he'd had them, in that truck, or put radiological waste from hospitals in that truck, he would have spread them far and wide. And if we were out with detectors trying to see where does this exist, how far has it gone, we'd be looking at a big chunk of Oklahoma that might still be closed down. The same thing, the guy that mailed anthrax back in 2001. We know that he mailed 6 letters. and he had enough material in each of those letters to kill millions of people. Well, what if instead of 6 letters, he'd taken that same amount of material and divvied it up and put it in 50 envelopes and mailed one to each governor? How much the United States might still be shut down while we're trying to figure out how to clean all the anthrax spores. So this is very real, and our military is working on these kind of responses. We have a certain amount of work in the civilian side of the government working on it too, but the military is really where our response is going to be. Should we do more? Well, I'm a great proponent of the military as well, so yes, I think we should do more. There was a biological terror response report given to the White House back in January, and I think it's not been acted on, probably because they're too busy with COVID. But that called for a lot of very specific actions and budgeting to be done in both the civilian and the military sectors. But yeah,
Right.
if one thing we know from Mother Nature, these bugs are smarter than we are.
Well, no question about that. I want to clarify, though, my comments. I think that the United States government has done a nice job against terrorism. And that's not what my comment really was meant to project. It's about our medical capacities and our abilities to be able to handle things, God forbid, if something got out of hand. Because what I've seen with the COVID-19 scenario is the United States and the world was not prepared for this. And that's just,
Absolutely.
again, I think that that's an opinion that's shared by many, many people. In closing, Dr. Cohen, let me ask you this. We've got a varying group of viewers on this show. I really am happy that we're really attracting some younger viewers. What would you say to the people that are on the show today and listening to the show about what they need to be doing to safeguard themselves and their families and to try to figure out how we get our arms around this thing?
When we first had to shut down the economy and the government, as you pointed out, it's because we had no idea what we were dealing with. Well, now we do have an idea. We have learned a lot of very important things. Most importantly, we have learned that social distancing, covering your nose and mouth, even with 2 layers of cloth, not any kind of special mask or filter, is effective, and good hand hygiene. Those work. So to me, not doing them is I can't fathom the stupidity. It is, when you wear a mask, you're saying I care about you. When you don't wear a mask, you're saying I don't care about you. And those are important things for young people to think about. What message do they want to be giving to each other?
Right. Well, Dr. Cohen, it's been great to have you on. This has really been a very informative discussion, and we want to have you on again. This show is going to be dedicated to current events, but we're going to really cover this COVID thing top to bottom. And so I really appreciate your time. Enjoy your family up there in Baltimore, and we'll be talking to you soon. Thanks so much for being on the show.
Thank you for inviting me, Frank. You guys stay safe.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Cohen. So here we have it, right? We have a real expert on the subject that basically has laid out where we are and what we're dealing with. I'll give you another important fact that hit me this weekend, and it really covers the political and economic pieces of this that I that I brought up in my initial monologue today. American Airlines, who's a great airline, they're in Dallas. That's their headquarters. I've flown millions of miles on them. They're as safe and as good an airline as there is out there. Has made an announcement that in the midst of this latest surge, that they are going to now go to full capacity July 1st, which is this week. That is an indication, quite frankly, for everybody, that this is so much more complicated in the United States than just the medical side of the COVID-19. If you're going to fill those planes and you're going to pack those planes while this thing is expanding, remember, only 2 states in the country had decreases of the situation on COVID-19. 2 states, Connecticut and Rhode Island. Everyone else is showing increases. And at this time, American Airlines has made a decision that they're now going to go to full capacity. As a businessman, that could be nothing more than how the economics of our country overlays this terrible pandemic. And it's so complicated and there's so many pieces to it. I guess my position really in the close of this show is I think that it really becomes incumbent upon everybody. Again, leaving the politicians and the politics and everything aside, to do what they can to really curb the growth of this pandemic, the growth of this COVID-19. And, you know, Europe is starting to open up now. You saw the photo in the UK. They're opening up now. Guess what's going to happen over there? They're going to have increases in cases now because they're not shut down anymore and they've opened up. And the question then becomes, how are they going to handle things? Because again, what happens in the United States is directly tied now to Europe, South America. We're one world as it relates to this. This is a one world problem. And it sounds to me from everything that I hear and read, and of course from our great guest, Dr. Murray Cohen, this isn't going away on its own. It's not going to just dry up and go away. So this is what we've got to do. We've got to do what each individual can do. We've got to keep our families safe, and we've got to continue to educate ourselves, which this show is going to really try to do, is get you information that ultimately can be helpful in your ability to keep your families and yourself safe and to do what you can to stop the growth of this pandemic. I appreciate everyone today for watching, and it was my pleasure to host this show, and we'll see you on Thursday, and we'll be talking a lot more about COVID-19, and we'll have a couple of other guests that we'll announce, and I look forward to everyone not only watching this broadcast, but signing on with us and staying with us. You can reach us at Facebook, you can reach us at Twitter, you can reach us at LinkedIn, and you can reach us on YouTube, the To Be Frank Show. Signing off for today. Everyone take care and stay safe. Thank you.